Okay, I'm gonna start anyway now. But if you hear any screaming in the background, it's not in my apartment, and I'm not responsible for it. Um, so welcome to another video here on my YouTube channel. Welcome, thank you so much for joining me here. This video is a highly requested topic. It was precisely requested in the comment section of one of my previous videos, in my previous video, which is learning in public. Let's talk about learning in public. So I've written this blog post here, right? And you can see that learning in public, it's still a draft. It's not 100% finished, but basically it walks you through everything that I'm going to talk about in this video. So you can also check out the blog post, which is linked below, if you prefer the written version, right? Like always in all of my videos. Now, it's going to talk about some of the questions, like the goals, why would you do it in the first place? Then ways you can share your learning journey, benefits, and some of the resources. I'm gonna talk you through all of them now. So let's talk about the first question. What is learning in public? When people say learning in public, and that's kind of thrown around a lot on Twitter and other social media platforms, what do we mean by it? Well, here on my YouTube channel, for instance, I share everything that I'm doing, right? Or like mostly. I'm sharing lots of the content that I'm learning about, lots of the tools that I'm using, and similar. Learning in public basically just means that you make your learning journey public. You share publicly the different steps that you take to understand a topic better, or learn about a platform or anything, to learn anything. And that could be varying from posting something on Twitter on a regular basis, to writing blog posts on a regular basis, to making all of your code publicly accessible on your GitHub profile, right? So it's basically about how often do you post, and what do you post, and where, like what kind of type of content you share with the world, right? So type of content and frequency of those posts. You could be posting every week on Twitter about your learning progress. That would be learning in public. You could make everything public on GitHub. That would be learning in public. You could make tutorials on YouTube. That would be learning in public. You could meet with people in like a study group on a regular basis. That would be learning in public. There are so many different ways that you can learn in public. There's not just one way, or like it doesn't mean that you have to go and get expensive equipment to do YouTube videos and similar if you want to start learning in public, right? So why would you want to start learning in public in the first place? There are lots and lots of benefits, and I will go through them in a second, of you making your learning journey publicly accessible. But the main one is that I find is that you will receive feedback, you will receive input. It will keep you going for longer to make your learning journey publicly accessible. So when you share your content publicly, people can see it. People can go through it and understand where you're coming from, what you're learning, how you approach your learning journey. I base my content on a lot of other people's content. A lot of times when I create a new blog post, I base that on like maybe 20 different blog posts and videos and GitHub repositories and other things, right? I don't make that stuff up out of nowhere. I base it on other people's content. So when somebody is looking for answers or is trying to fix a bug and going through different repositories, they might come across your work, right? And that might answer their question. They're going to go like, yay, that person answered exactly my question. Like you answered exactly their question, right? It could also be that they're just like, I don't really understand what they're talking about. I'm not there yet. I'm not at that level. Or it doesn't really answer my question. Or they approached it in a way that I don't want to approach to solve that problem. And then they're going to move on. A lot of times we get scared learning in public. We think about, oh my God, people are going to criticize us. People are going to call us out for all of our mistakes. Let me tell you, the person who has the time to go through people's repositories, to go through people's blog posts, just to criticize them, that person you should ignore. Ignore them, right? There are some people like that, but very few. The amount of time, like how often that happens, it's ridiculous in the amount, like in comparison to the amount of times that people actually find your content useful and comment and compliment your content and similar, right? So usually people will give you support, which will keep you going for longer as well and get you more excited about your learning journey and similar, right? So the benefits just completely outweigh anything negative that could happen. So how do you get started working in public? There are tons of different ways, and the way that I got started learning in public will not be the right way for you or most people out there, probably. So I made my learning journey first public, or the first time I started learning something and I made it public was when I started to learn HTML and CSS. So what I did was basically, first, identify what you want to learn. What topic do you want to engage in? And that will depend on you and your goals. I wrote a blog post on getting started in DevOps and the cloud native ecosystem that helps you to identify what you should be learning. Identify what you want to learn. Identify how you want to learn it. The types of content that you want to consume. You don't have to go and pay for expensive courses because most of the content is freely available. However, courses have the benefit that somebody who is knowledgeable, or usually tends to be more knowledgeable about a subject, or somebody sat down and thought about, okay, what should I be teaching in this course, right? What topics are based on each other? Doesn't mean that the person knows what they're talking about and they're an expert. They just sat down and thought about, okay, what should I be teaching, right? And then you can easily consume that content. However, once you identify what you want to learn, how you want to learn it, for example, through blog posts or through books or through trial and error, just by making more and more GitHub repositories where you try to solve coding problems, right? You then go and you try to find those resources, right? And that's just a Googling marathon, okay? You just will have to Google it to find those really amazing resources that are publicly available for free. I have a weekly DevOps newsletter where I share free online learning resources from across the DevOps space, so you can subscribe to the newsletter and come across that content more often in an easier format. It's sent right to your inbox on a weekly basis. Maybe check that out. Similarly, there are other newsletters related to different coding languages or different topics and so on that you can also subscribe to. Similarly, there are other people who share what they do, right? So you could look at what they base their learning experience, their learning journey on. That's the next thing. Then what I would do is, on a weekly basis, I would decide what's your goal. What do you want to achieve on a weekly basis? Now, a lot of times you will not know exactly what you have to learn day to day until you think about it and until you are in the learning process. Until I sit down and I think about, for example, container security, I won't know exactly the different topics that are encompassed within container security that I will have to learn about. So that's the next thing. That I think about what do I have to learn while I'm learning it. And I basically write, whenever I come across something new, I write it down. That's the next thing. So then I would also think about how do you want to allocate your time. A lot of times if we don't put it in our calendars, it's not gonna happen. So really settle for a time. It could be in the morning, each day, half an hour, 1 hour, maybe 10 minutes, depending how much time you can allocate to learning, right? And that really depends on you. I can't give you a plan because it's so based on your own personal life, right? So that's how I would approach it. Now, what is the goal of learning in public? Well, that also depends highly on you. I wrote another blog post, like mentioned earlier, on getting started in the cloud native and DevOps ecosystem that helps you to identify your goals, set your goals, and then basically try to identify a plan and how to reach them. So check out that blog post and the previous video if you're curious. So how do you share your learning journey? How do you share what you're learning about? Many people just post on Twitter and other social media platforms, and that's amazing, and that's a great start. Then a lot of people, they start by starting a blog, like a blogging platform profile. Now, I started my first blog on Medium. Medium is now highly paid for and behind paywall stuff, so I would recommend Dev.to. Also because there's a lot more tech content on Dev.to, so check that out. Similarly, you can just start a GitHub profile and put stuff on GitHub. Like I have my 100 Days of Kubernetes book that I started and that I really encourage everybody to contribute to on GitHub, right? And those are just basically notes. It's a book that's based on REST and written with REST, and it's just this book that you can now access. However, here is like a kind of an overview, a blog post with different platforms where you can find more resources that you can use either day to day, for example, these video platform calls, things, communication stuff, or also some note-taking apps. Some of them are free. For example, I'm a huge fan of Notion. My public DevOps diary here is based on Notion. Like this is all done with Notion, and now it has a URL Now, I can show you how I set this up, but basically here are my first notes of 100 days of Kubernetes. That's where I took all of my notes. That's literally it. It's completely free. You can set up calendars, you can set up links like on our website, you can talk about yourself, you can put your resume, you could put your public speaking experience, you can put anything on Notion. So I highly promote Notion for that kind of stuff. Similarly, if you want to get started with open source, I highly recommend EdiHub. What is EdiHub? It's this amazing community started by Ed, on getting started in open source, encouraging more people to just get started in open source, making open source projects more inclusive, encouraging each other, and basically it's this amazing, thriving community with people who help each other out with their goals. So check that out if you want to get started in open source. However, you don't have to contribute to other open source projects when you want to get started in making your code and your work publicly accessible on GitHub, right? So here are the top 5 benefits that I see in learning in public. Number 1, like mentioned earlier, making that public commitment can keep you going for longer. There are studies that show when you make public commitments, such as I'm going to stop smoking, you're more likely to do so because you have that public commitment. Like for example, share it with your family members, with your friends, announce it to them. There are lots and lots of different challenges like 100 days of cloud, 100 days of code, 100 days of Kubernetes, where people make that public commitment to make their learning journey public, and then they actually keep going for longer. That's number 1. Number 2 is, like mentioned as well, you can receive really valuable feedback because people are going to see it, what you're learning on, right? So when you ask somebody questions, you can actually link to what you've done already, and then they understand, okay, where you at? What are you struggling with? How can I help you, right? If it's already public. Number 3, iterating on what you're learning can improve your knowledge over time. For example, usually I read about a topic, then I write about a topic, and then I'm gonna make these videos. So it's at least 3 times that I'm learning about the same topic, right? And with that, you iterate and iterate and iterate, and you kind of build this crust, I guess, around your knowledge. So you have the knowledge, like the things that you learn, and then with every layer, you kind of build around it, and it really manifests itself in your brain. Number 4, you can meet amazing people online, right? It's usually more fun to learn things together in a group of people, right? So you can meet amazing people online while you learn in public, and then you can make the experience more fun, and you can keep also going for longer if you have a group of people whom you can connect with if you have any questions or if you just want to brainstorm ideas. And number 5 is probably one of the main ones. It can boost your career. Most of my jobs, if not all of them that I got before, I got them because I was making my knowledge and what I was looking at and learning about publicly available, right? Accessible to everybody online. And so my employers and my potential employers could see what I was already working on. What did I know? How do I approach problems, right? They could see that on my GitHub profile, on my blog posts, on my videos, and similar. And that gives them higher confidence in hiring you. Somebody could have maybe more qualifications, like certificates or degrees and similar than I am, right? But they might not be able to see how does this person actually work? What is the evidence that a person has that they can actually get the job done, right? That's why I also recommend everybody, if you apply for a job and you don't have enough content available online, do submit example projects, really. Like employers, they're really grateful to see example projects. It helps you as well, and you can, even if you don't get hired or you don't get to the interview process, you can still usually make that work openly accessible. And that's why also a lot of employers, they will ask you to take home coding problems and similar, because they need to see what you do, right? How do you work? Now, lastly, I have a bunch of resources linked right here. Now, the first resource is basically EdiHub. The second resource is this repository of the collection of resources that I showed you as well already. Then check out Kunal's videos. He has amazing videos on getting started with different topics. I also recorded this video on what is learning in public. If you want more details, if you want to learn more about, this is more like the TLDR. What is learning in public for me? How would I suggest somebody to get started? And then the last tip is really just get started, just with anything, just get started, because usually once you get started, once you're in motion, it's much easier to change direction because you're already going, right? You're already looking at things, you already know yourself around GitHub, for example, or you already have a blog post and then you can just writing about something else, or you already know people whom you can look out for inspiration of what are they learning, what can I take home from that. Now, I really hope you enjoyed this video. I really hope it was helpful. If it was, please do hit the like button, subscribe to my channel, hit the bell notification icon to not miss out on future videos. I really hope to see you in one of my upcoming videos. Have an amazing day. Bye bye.